Alright, it's debunking time. Time to talk to dumb fucking people about dumb fucking shit they say. Remember this video right here on the screen where I made another one of my predictions that ended up being right? Big fucking shocker, right? No, it's not. So I made this video last July. It's been almost a year. It's called How the Michael Jackson Fandom Has Changed in the Past Decade. I basically talked about how, in the past decade, the Michael Jackson fandom basically act like SJWs, or many SJWs have infiltrated the Michael Jackson fandom. Essentially, because all they ever talk about is race this, race that, SJWism, sexism, it's all about that, right? Like now, when people talk about Michael Jackson being accused, you know, people won't talk like they used to and say, oh, it's about money or whatever, right? Now, people will say things like, it's because he's black, or it's because, you know, Wade and James and them are white guys. You know, stuff like that. It's all about race now. It's all about sexism. Oh, because Wade and James are men. There's always something like that, right? But when we would talk intelligently about the Michael Jackson allegations, you know, we would discuss a little thing that you might be unfamiliar with. It's called reality. You know, we would talk sensible. We would look at court transcripts. We would look at the cases. We would look at the background of the accusers. We would look at the fact that objectively speaking, they wanted money. We would look at all those things in the experiences to see why they're accusing Michael, and we would find evidence to prove Michael innocent. I'm sorry. Yeah, to prove him guilty. Anyway. But now, nobody talks like that. Because of SJWism, the Me Too movement, feminism, and all this bullshit, just SJWism in general, and the fact that we're in modern day and people have all lost their brains, now it's all about his skin is black. Or he's a man. Or Wade and James are men. Or because they're white. You know, it's always stupid racial / sexism stuff like that. And it's all just made up shit to fuel your personal narrative. In fact, in general, everything has been done to fuel a personal narrative. I mean, for Christ's sakes, look at what's been going on recently. Recently, George Floyd has already had, like, what? More than one funeral. He's being hailed as, like, an American hero, despite the fact that he held a pregnant woman at gunpoint, but let's ignore that because his skin is black. Fuck off. And all this other dumb shit. His funerals were like being broadcasted all over the fucking TV on every network. And this is like the dumbest shit ever because it's like nobody cares. See, the thing is, everything is done for a political narrative. Let me explain it to you as deep as I can. Even if he did deserve a funeral like this, you would still be wrong. Why? Because many black people have died at the hands of police. Many black people have died in general. Many white people have died at the hands of police. In fact, as I've already said, statistically, more white people die at the hands of police. But, you know, we can ignore that fact for your precious little fucking feelings. The point is, many white people have also died, both at the hands of police and just in general. Yet, how odd that none of those people got a great big televised fucking funeral, just George Floyd. It kind of makes you wonder, if you're dumb, why that is. And if you're smart like me, it makes you go, I know exactly why. It's because nobody gives a shit about who dies. Let's be honest, you don't care. You don't. You don't give a fuck who dies, or what color the person is who died, or how they died, or who they died from. All you care about is pushing a political narrative. All this was to you, I'm sure there's some George Floyd care in there, maybe a little bit, but the majority of it is, I now have an excuse to scream Black Lives Matter, and now I'm going to turn this into a great, big, huge political statement about white people evil and black people are all victims, despite the facts showing the complete opposite. And we're now going to make this into a great big movement now, a nice great big fucking bowel movement like the rest of the SJW culture. And we're going to televise this shit and make it into a great big deal, and we're going to defund the police because that's a great fucking genius idea. And we're going to basically ruin society even more, and Matt's predictions don't matter because he's right too often. That's what's happening. That's what's happening. You know, Go to my channel. I'm gonna fucking puke everywhere. Go to my channel. You know, most of the recent videos I've made debunk all this shit. You know, there's the secret to ending racism video, the stupid girl argues with her parents about racism, this is the worst thing YouTube has ever done, user denounces Matt's FTR, YouTube is controlling the comment section, I have a dream, and George Floyd, truth about black and white victims. Check a lot of these videos out. The majority of the topics in them all intertwine with each other, and they're all about the recent events, because it was as early as a week ago. So they all intertwine, and I really think you should watch all of them to get a great big update on how YouTube is, you know, censoring comments that talk about this kind of thing or debunk it with facts, because, you know, we hate facts. Facts are a bad thing, right? You know, and I talk about Black Lives Matter and how it's a fucking terrorist organization, because it is. Let me just take a drink of water. I'm actually really happy that Antifa has been recently called a terrorist organization, because they are, and Black Lives Matter is not really that much better. You know, I feel like I need to point out something here. Some people, some black people, they might be Black Lives Matter supporters, whatever, some of them will go, you know, just because some people in Black Lives Matter attack or kill other people doesn't mean they're all like that. No, it doesn't. But the fact that they do it at all, and you supporting that organization that does that, kind of makes you, at the very least, an accomplice. So fuck yourself. I mean, by that logic, I can support ISIS, because they're not all like that. Fuck off. Anyway. We're now going to get into the meat and potatoes of this video, but I'm going to make sure to exploit whatever I can. So let's all watch a video of me doing one of my best dances while I talk. So anyway, I just want to show you all how little I give a fuck about your stupid goddamn fucking opinions over the facts and stats that I'm showing. Anyway, like I said, in those videos on my channel, I did a lot of research and debunking into Black Lives Matter and the facts, you know. Here's a couple. Black people have the highest percentage of cheating, the highest percentage of, you know, black children growing up without fathers. Black people make up only 13% of the U.S. population, but commit 50%, actually a little bit more than half of all crimes. And people wonder why cops approach them with suspicion. Well, if 13% of the population was white, and they committed more than half of all the crimes in the entire country, I think you'd be approaching white people with a little bit of caution, but if we do it to black people, it's all of a sudden racist. Fuck you. We can also ignore the fact that the majority of black people who grow up to be criminals, like people who steal a lot, we're going to say, oh, it's all about systemic racism. No, it's actually not. If you ask any fucking psychologist, they will all tell you that the majority of black children who grow up to be criminals, whether if they're stealing or killing or whatever, it's because they grow up without fathers. As I just mentioned, black people have the highest percentage of cheating, and then, you know, the wives kick the fathers out, and then the son or whatever grows up without a dad. That's actually the reason. Go ask a fucking certified psychologist if you don't believe me. Anyway, let's continue on with the more important stuff. Lately, just like I mentioned in my video about MJ fans the last decade, now, stupid fucking MJ fans, primarily black MJ fans, are now saying that if you prefer 90s Michael Jackson over 80s Michael Jackson, you are a racist. You think I'm joking, don't you? No, that's the new thing now, just like I mentioned in my video, making everything about racism and sexism. It's now racist to prefer 90s MJ. What a stupid, stupid fucking comment. There are so many reasons why a person might prefer the 90s MJ over the 80s MJ. I prefer the 90s MJ over the 80s MJ. Is it because I'm racist? Of course not. You know, it's funny. Back in the day when people had free-thinking brains, they were allowed to, you know, preference whatever was their favorite without being called a racist just for saying, yeah, I like that thing better than the other thing. Back in the day when people's brains were able to function, we used to call that preference. Now apparently it's called racism to have preference. Funny. Kind of like how the SJWs say it's also sexist to not want to date a trans person. Fucking hell. Anyway, preference is now dead. Welcome to modern day. And, yeah, it's dumb. Why do I prefer 90s MJ? Well, let's just see. Dangerous is my favorite album. Dangerous Tour is my favorite tour. I love the long, you know, the long hair he had over his face on Dangerous Tour. It looked really fucking cool. It has absolutely nothing to do with his skin being white. Zip fucking nothing. I should also point out to a lot of these people who are claiming racism, just because Michael Jackson's skin turned white does not mean that he's not a black man. Just thought you should fucking know. His skin may have been white due to vitiligo, but guess what? He was still, at heart, a black man. You may have forgotten that in your racism, but he's still a black man. The point is, when he turned white, his life did not get better, as a lot of these racist SJWs want to say. His life actually got worse. Ever since he turned white, many people hated him because back then, people thought that he bleached his skin and thought that Michael hated his own skin color, so many people hated him. You probably didn't know that because you're too stupid. That's the first thing. Secondly, it was in the 90s where all the pedophilia stuff came out and he kept being accused. I wonder if he would have been accused if his skin remained black. Interesting. His album sales plummeted to shit. You got Thriller selling over 100 million today. You got Bad, which sold like 30, 40 million. And then Dangerous and On sold like 20, 15, 25 million. Which for Michael is fucking dick shit nothing. So don't be telling me the white man gets everything when even Michael himself, the man you're claiming it's all about racism, meanwhile his life got worse when he turned white, not better. Fuck yourself. And at the same time, look at all the classic stuff. Yes, there are many classic songs from his black days, like Billie Jean, Beat It, and Thriller, and stuff like that. But when impersonators are all doing his white time, it's not because he's white. You know, I've heard some of these racist SJWs saying things like, okay, but even black impersonators are making themselves white with makeup. Yes, but it's not a racial thing. They're doing that because maybe they find that appearance easier. Maybe they want to impersonate Dangerous Tour because it was just an overall better tour. I'm not saying it was better than Bad or anything, but it was more ideal. It was a tour that everybody could relate to, that everyone could enjoy. It has more songs in it that people enjoy watching, like Jam, for example. It has nothing to do with his fucking skin being white, okay? Nothing. And on top of that, you say that impersonators never do his black days. Bullshit. I've actually seen many impersonators have his Thriller look or his Jackson 5 look. Oh, the video's over. Here, I'll put on another one for you. Anyway, impersonators do not impersonate his white look or his white tours because of racism. Nobody's even thought about this until like a month ago. Again, it's just you race baiting and virtue signaling. That's all this is. You're nothing but idiots. It has absolutely nothing to do with his skin color. People just prefer the Dangerous Tour. That's it. People just prefer that look. And I don't mean his skin color. I mean things like his hair or his clothing. That's all it fucking is. And there are impersonators who do his Jackson 5 days or his Thriller days. So don't tell me there fucking isn't. And you know what the most amazing thing is too about this whole thing of like, oh, you know, racism is around every corner and there's racism in the Michael Jackson community. Here's a question for you. If that had any truth in it whatsoever, then why is it that when he died, why didn't we see any riots? Michael Jackson was a black man who was potentially murdered by Conrad Murray. Why was there no riots then? Is it because you didn't fucking care? Or is it because back then people had brains and didn't make everything into a fucking racial and sexism issue? Yes, he was murdered and there should have been, you know, a lot of outcry. And there was a lot of outcry against Conrad Murray. But it wasn't the kind of outcry you're seeing today with protests and riots and racism around every corner. It was just a regular death as far as the world was concerned, but more extreme because it was Michael Jackson, but not to the point of like Black Lives Matter, racism, this. It makes me wonder, what kind of riots would have happened if Michael Jackson's skin was still black when he died? It makes me wonder what kind of riots would there have been if Conrad Murray was a white guy. And that right there is your fucking evidence that Michael Jackson fans and SJWs and Black Lives Matter and all this shit that's going on don't give a fuck about if a black man is actually killed or a white man is killed or who they're killed by or whatever. It's all about a political narrative. That's all it's been. That's all it ever will be. You are fucking idiots. And as I said in my previous video, if it really was about people dying and not a political narrative, then Black Lives Matter would care about the fact that the highest percentage is actually black people being killed by other black people. But they don't have a word to say. Why? Because how can they make a political point when a black guy is killed by another black person? They can't make a political point, so they don't give a shit. When people die, all they are to these organizations like Black Lives Matter or whatever, all they are political pawns to make a point. It's not about actual love and care about someone dying. It's all about making a political point. They see that many black people are killed by other blacks, but they don't say anything because you can't make a political point about that. But a black guy being killed by a white guy, even though it's a very low percentage, in fact, the lowest percentage, but by all means, you can make a political narrative point about that, about racism this. So let's talk about that. That right there is your proof that you don't give a fuck who dies or who they died from. It's all about, am I able to write about it and scream racism? Oh, I can? Now I'll care. That's what it's all about. And when it comes to the Michael Jackson fan community, you guys are also fucking morons. I hope to get a lot of backlash for this. Please, give me backlash. I'm asking for it because I love tearing you fucking idiots down with the truth. I fucking love it. Michael Trapson, who is a pretty big person in the MJ fan community, he's not as big as I used to be, but he's pretty big. He's going off lately. He's been going off saying that every single person, every single Michael Jackson fan is a racist if they're not black, and that they're a racist if they prefer 90s MJ and all this shit. Racism. Nobody ever said this shit before, and it wasn't because people weren't paying attention. It's because back then we were allowed to have preference. It's because back then people just loved Michael Jackson for who he was. For the artist, the performer, the singer, the dancer. Not everything was a goddamn political narrative. You created that because you are a racist. You are a scumbag who wants to put George Floyd up as a hero despite the fact that he held a pregnant woman at gunpoint just for a political narrative. You're the fucking scumbag who wants to claim that all white people are racist just for a political narrative. You are the scumbag who wants to claim that if you like 90s Michael Jackson, you're a racist just for a political narrative. You are the scumbag who is saying that, George Floyd is an American hero just because he's black, while ignoring all the other past black people and white people who were killed just for a fucking political narrative. You created this. You did this. You are scum. The only racists here are the people who race bait for a political narrative, not a person who merely says, yeah, I think Michael Jackson's hair looked nice during the Dangerous tour. You're the racist. And this whole fucking thing in the MJ fan community is retarded. Oh, the dance video's over, so am I. Goodbye.